Welcome to Sagenheim and a new episode of the Thidrekssaga. In the previous part, we witnessed how the knight Samson rose up to power and kidnapped the maiden Hildisvit, how he slayed her father, the king, and how now he's hiding away in the woods with her. Let's see what this episode will bring. Here now, from the olden days. The king rode a long time in the forest until he found a house. A woman was standing in front of it. The king recognized her as Hildisvit, his kinswoman. He asked her how she was, where her lover was, and finally, whether she would like to come with them. She answered, "My lord, this little house is my lodging, but Sir Samson rode away last night. If ye have not encountered him, then I don't know where he has ridden. Why have you come this far into the forest, through such a dark wood, on such unknown ways? And why are you riding at night? Where is your night quarter? I also wonder, why are you here so early? Sir Samson told me that it takes a half day to come out of the forest." The king answered, "You speak the truth, lady, when you say that it is to be wondered that we have ridden such a long way into this forest. Yesterday, in the evening, we took lodging in a castle and awoke to find every house in flames and to hear shouting and the blare of horns. We were 100 knights, but today I am riding through this wood with no more than 6 and have no idea where the others are." Then Lady Hildisvit spoke. "If it is as I think, Sir Samson has done all of these things to you, and he has done you great harm." Now the king answered, "It is certain that you are foolish and that you have been greatly misled by Sir Samson, that he could alone burn our castle and make such a noise as if he could blow through 30 horns at once. Take your clothes and go with us. You have stayed here too long and behaved badly for yourself and your kinsmen." She answered, "I cannot go with you now, because I know that you will soon have enough to do. Turn your horses and answer the man who now comes to talk with you." And now the king saw that Sir Samson was riding up. Each turned his horse against the other and drew his sword. Sir Samson struck King Brunstein and split his helmet and his head, so that the sword came to rest at the shoulders, and he fell dead from his horse. The second blow he gave to a knight, so that he split his byrnie and his torso down to the saddle. He turned then against the third. Those remaining now took flight, and Sir Samson pursued them and did not stop until he had killed all of them, except for one who was severely wounded. He came into the town and could tell the story of the meeting of Sir Samson and King Brunstein, and how they settled their feud. Now all could hear that Sir Samson was without equal among men. Then Sir Samson returned to his lady and spoke to her. "I have stayed too long here in the forest. I will no longer hide here from my enemies. Get together your clothing and all of your treasures and prepare yourself." This she did. After that, he took 3 horses and loaded them with gold, silver and good treasures. He put Hildisvit on the 4th and rode the 5th himself. Now it must be told that they rode their way until they were far out of the forest. They encountered 12 men riding. They had large horses, broad shields, shining helmets, and stout spear shafts, and they were riding hard. Sir Samson asked his lady, "Who might they be?" She replied, "My lord, I do not know who these men are, but they are riding valiantly. Do you recognize any of them?" He answered, "I do not recognize the men themselves, but their coats of arms may be known to me. The first man has a red shield and a lion with gold on his banner. "The mark belongs to my father and to his brother Thetmar, and I have it on my own shield, so that I know that these are my kinsmen." When they met, Sir Samson asked who they were, where they had come from, and where they were going. Then their chief answered, "We have come a long way, but I think we have reached our goal now that we have found you. We have heard for a long time how you have been attacked and what an overwhelming force you have had to deal with, and how you were dishonored and had few supporters. You are our kinsmen. I am Thetmar, your uncle, and my 2 sons are here, and all of these men are your kinsmen. We have all sought to find you for a long time, and we wish to offer you aid in whatever you decide to do." Sir Samson welcomed his uncle and thanked him warmly for his goodwill. They now rode out of the forest all together to a city that belonged to King Brunstein. But they did not find the man of the city, because the man had already heard that Samson was coming before they arrived there, and that he was the man who had killed Earl Hrothgar, King Brunstein, and many other powerful chieftains. They remembered the great deeds he had done, and how great he was in all things, and they were without a leader. The wisest of the men assembled for a conference. Before they ended the conference, they decided to settle with Sir Samson. With this decision, they went to see him with a great honor and a large group of men. They found him in the hall that he had taken as his lodging. The knights were sent before Samson, fell on their knees, bowed before him, placed themselves in his power, and became his vassals. They gave him the city and asked him to be their chieftain. Sir Samson received their speech well and bade them stand up. The agreement was sealed, and the Burghers took him as their duke. A little later, Duke Samson rode out of the city with 500 men. He rode to another city, which was richer and had a larger population than any other. He sent men to the city and said to the Burghers that they should give the city up or defend their property and lives. When the Burghers heard this news, they called a council of those who ruled over the city. And then they discussed it with the people. And before they quit, a chieftain spoke long and eloquently to the whole population about how Sir Samson had started out as a child, what great deeds he had performed in his youth and since becoming a knight, and how he had gained the kingdom and the city, how he had conducted both single combats and battles, and how he was generous, valiant, and popular with his friends, and grim to his enemies, how stubborn he was in his word, and what ill had befallen Earl Hrothgar and King Brunstein in their feud. It was to be expected that they would fare the same, and that they would be unable to defend their city against his army, for the greatest chieftain would not be able to retain his life before Sir Samson. It is thus my advice that we welcome him warmly." And he ended his speech. Many other men spread this opinion, and no one was bold enough to speak against it, and so the Burghers decided to welcome him warmly. When Duke Samson rode into the city, all of the gates stood open, and he rode into the city with his army. Next, the people were summoned to an assembly, and at this assembly they gave him the city and all the district, along with the castles that belonged to it. And then the Burghers offered to give him the title of king. But he answered that he did not want to have the title of king, or any other titles than what he already had before he had set up his standard in the middle of Salerni. He remained 5 days in that city. When Duke Samson rode from this city, he had 2,000 knights and many other men. He made his way with the army towards Salerni, and there was not a town along the way that did not give itself up to him. Then he sent his messenger to Salerni, and had his intention made known to all, that he would rule over the city, whether it be easy or difficult, and that he would sooner die with all his men than not gain the city. At this news, all the burghers were grieved and summoned all the wise men and the chieftains, who spent many days before they could come to a decision. Now the burghers heard that the duke had arrived before the town. Then all of the people rode out of the city with weapons, and they brought out all their banners and their best equipment, and had all kinds of games, harps and fiddles, viols and drums, along with all kinds of entertainment that might be found there. When the duke and his army arrived, they dismounted. First those who were highest in rank, then all the knights, and he saw that they wanted to give up the city and to give themselves into his power. The duke thanked them for their goodness. They followed him into the town. The same day he received the title of king, and all the castles and treasures that had belonged to King Brunstein. After this, he sent messengers through all the country that King Brunstein had ruled over, that all men should now serve him and render homage. King Samson now ruled over his kingdom for a time. And thus, the third part of the Thidrekssaga is coming to an end. In the next part, we will hear about Samson's sons Ermenric and Thetmar, Samson's coming of age, and his returning lust for adventure and power. Thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here at Sagenheim.